Who knows? Wow, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm going. I'm doing okay. Just so you know, I'm live and everything, so don't say any personal information or crazy things you don't want the whole world to know. And yeah,
Okay, I'll hide all the secret stuff. Give me a second. I'm kidding.
yeah, okay.
I'm good. This is my first time on Discord, though, on one of those. So I guess I'm officially a boomer because I'm clearly incompetent when it comes to this stuff.
Well, considering that you literally set your microphone and video up and they're working flawlessly the first time, you have easily transcended boomer status. Okay, because most of the people that I talk to aren't even capable of making Zoom work. So good job, congratulations.
Well, I've realized this, by the way, because when you're growing up, you make fun of people for not being able to work the TV remote. And then you realize that the reason that you can't do that is because basically they stop paying attention. They get somebody else to do it for them. So the technology it gets better and you get worse. Well, you don't keep up with it. So that's kind of how it is.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Um,
try.
yeah, I can't really do TV remotes these days. They've gotten way more complicated.
They have like a billion buttons. It's insane.
Yeah. Okay. Oh yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I have no idea who you are. I had people reach out to both of us apparently to have us chat with each other. Do you want to introduce yourself for me and my audience? Yeah, go for it.
Sure. Sure, I'll do that. So my background is in journalism. Essentially, I went from sort of more uh, writing about culture, pop culture, and travel and business and tech, and somehow ended up in more social commentary as well in the last maybe 3 years. But before that, I wrote for, very kind of mainstream media like the Washington Post and the Guardian and Mashable and Variety and all that kind of stuff. And then I started getting more active with my Twitter account. And in particular, I also wrote a book called No Apologies. And that book is about basically the suppression of speech in different arenas like science, academia, culture, arts, all sorts of things like that, science. So, I'm definitely a big sort of advocate for speech
Mm-hmm.
and specifically having conversations. Uh, I'm not like there should be zero consequences for anything kind of person necessarily, but I do think that we have to give a lot more grace to people. And I do believe in having conversations with people you disagree with, which, having come from a more liberal background, I didn't even know conservatives pretty much until like maybe 4 years ago. And
Okay.
then I started having conversations and I was like, okay, well, they're not quite all as terrible as it's been portrayed to me. And I've had a bit of an evolution on this thinking also. So I went from thinking, well, this has been sort of they've been unfairly attacked to, well, some of these attacks actually make sense because there is elements of it that, and I think we'll probably agree on that part, like conspiratorial kind of thinking and that kind of stuff has been driving me particularly bonkers lately.
Mm-hmm.
But, where I was interested in talking to you is because, and I watched you a bit before,
Uh-oh.
uh,
Okay.
in some debates. No, and I actually thought, I actually thought you have a good memory. You seem to do your research. So I appreciated that, regardless of whether I always agreed with every opinion. Uh, but also, you were willing to have the conversations with people with whom you strongly disagree. And that's not very common on the left. So I liked having the left represented as somebody being able to speak to, or liberals being somebody who can speak to people of different tribes and then you kind of more recently went, I guess I'll describe it as nuclear.
That's fair.
And I guess where I'd love to start with you is kind of get a sense of, well, why? Because to me it was strange. I don't think you were triggered necessarily. I think there was something that must have provoked you to go in that direction. So you went from having sort of civil conversations with the likes of, Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro to yelling at people essentially. And I didn't get the sense that you were yelling at them because you've lost your mind, or that you were yelling at them because you were like so triggered and emotional about it. It seemed like a choice, but I'd love to hear from you as to what drove you towards that change in how you communicate with people.
There's different like rhetorical strategies that you can use to appeal to people. When my stream originally started to kind of like be more about politics was probably 2016. There was this horrendous event called Gamergate. I don't know if you ever heard of it, but basically all the
Yes, I
gamers
have.
decided that they were going to become involved in politics, which was a mistake. And I was part of the wave of that people. I was more of a left-leaning person, and I enjoyed a lot of the more toxic aspects of internet culture because I'm very much like a child of the internet. Like I grew up in these horrible chat rooms, in these horrible places, having these horrible, everything was horrible about it. But because of that, it kind of made me uniquely suited to enter like the death arenas with a lot of these conservatives and like start screaming at people and stuff. And that's how I gained my initial appeal. As time kind of went on, especially around 2018, 2019, I started to fight more with far left people, and then time went on even further. I tried to kind of change from the I'm going to embarrass you and make you look stupid so that your fans abandon you approach to kind of like a more empathetic, like, hey, I understand where you're coming from. Like, let's see if I can step into kind of your frame and kind of appeal to you more kind of approach. And I think that both have their merits. I think that the empathetic one was a little bit more successful because you can grab people that might be immediately turned off from the combative or divisive rhetoric who are now a little bit more willing to listen to you. But I think that what I noticed, and it's been building a lot over the past 6 or 7 months, and I've had a lot of conversations on stream with people where I'm saying, like, how do I have conversations with some of these conservatives when we can be friendly? But then I also feel like they're advocating for things that are like leading to the destruction of my country that I'm becoming more and more invested in as I get older and I learn more about it. And that was building and growing. And then the Trump assassination attempt thing happened. And I'm looking at Twitter and I'm looking at like all the comments. And I think I tweeted my first instinct whenever political violence happens is always, hey, like we don't like it when somebody gets banned from a social media network. We don't like when somebody attacks somebody. Don't punch Nazis. Assassination attempts are bad. Like this is not good. But the thing that was going through my head was everybody was talking about how the divisive rhetoric from the left was causing this. And in my mind, Trump is celebrated for his divisive rhetoric. And now like the natural, logical outcome of that, which is violence, has happened. And I'm thinking like, why the fuck would I like apologize for any of this or feel bad about any of this or feel sorry for any of this? And then when I started to see more and more responses that came out, I just got an ADHD diagnosis. So I've been on Vyvanse for like 8 months. So I've been able to read through like full Supreme Court cases and the Federalist Papers and study history more. And then I'm like looking at the past like year in the United States, and I'm looking at like all this Trump stuff. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is unfucking believable. How is it that conservatives seem to simultaneously be able to dictate the entire media agenda, what we talk about, while also eluding responsibility for every single thing they've been involved in? There were no conservative apologies for the pipe bomber dude. There were no conservative apologies for January 6th. Half of them don't even think it was real. The other half think that it was like the feds or Antifa. There were no apologies. The fact that like it's the party of like they don't believe in vaccines anymore. I noticed that all of this was happening. And then to put a bow on it, one of the issues I've had as I look back is who I can talk to is a function of how rough I want to be with that person. And the gentler I am, the wider my reach. But it got to the point where I'm having these conversations, with the Ben Shapiros, the Jordan Petersons, the Candace Owens, and I'm having to hold my tongue on so much. And then as soon as I said, I'll admit, it was a little unhinged over like the Trump assassination attempt thing. All of these people are like, This guy's way too extreme. I can't talk to him anymore. It's like, excuse me, motherfuckers. I'm too extreme? What are you where is all the Paul Pelosi jokes? You guys were laughing when I made fun of Palestinians because I'm generally pro-Israeli. You guys were laughing at those jokes. And when I was attacking Muslims, you made fun of that or you enjoyed that. But now when I make jokes about this particular thing, now I'm like beyond the pale. Fuck that. I feel like I'm playing a bad role right now in legitimizing speakers who I think should be wholly castigated and bullied the fuck out of. And the fact that the opinions are treated seriously, like I have to have my 15th debate on like how large Hunter Biden's cock is and if we should be talking about that more than the President Joe Biden it drives me fucking insane. Sorry. That was a lot.
I agree with you
Yeah.
that there is this kind of lack, I guess, of accountability or self, because I was somebody who was basically really advocating for people on the right who I think were at times unfairly vilified. Mm-hmm. And then I thought these people were sort of allies in principles in terms of, defending freedom of speech, not, bullying people and things like that. And what I've been seeing is a lot of the same people, not everyone, but a lot of people have sort of turned around and have become far more extreme and are using the same tactics. And when I call them out on that, they get mad at me and they say, well, this is something you could utilize on the left. We're just using the same toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, regardless of which side you're on, for me, it's about the principles, and I don't care what the other side is doing because that's what grounds me. But at the same time, I kind of, so there's a part of me when I was watching you go ballistic on some of these conservatives in the spaces. Look, I'm a human being and I'm not like this perfect person. And there's a part of me that was like eating a little bit of popcorn
Mm-hmm.
in my head. And I think also where you made a really strong point, and when you went so strong, was that you were basically calling them out on the lack of knowledge, which I think that was a big thing, because you went so hard, it allowed me to see where they're just completely uninformed on some of these things. So you can argue from a place of being informed, you can have different opinions, but if you're not informed, you shouldn't be going so strong.
Yes.
But at the same time, I think about, when I have that desire to sometimes go ballistic on someone, I think about, okay, who else is watching? It's not about me and that person. It's about me and the audience and what they're getting. And if they're seeing you sort of confirm these very stereotypes of leftists, they're so triggered and they hate us. And, I do think that the things that you said about the Trump supporter being dead, I absolutely thought that was awful. I can't make you have empathy for the guy, nor would I demand it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I guess the way that I look at that situation is even if you say, okay, January 6th, total insurrection, Trump, absolutely was responsible for it. Even if you accept all of that, then you have a person who went to the rally, and having talked to all these people, that a lot of people are not well informed. Some people are just downright stupid. And somebody being wrong doesn't mean that it's okay for them to be hurt. I know you weren't advocating for them to be hurt, but for that person to sort of have it coming, I don't think that's a fair approach. What do you think on that?
So I partially agree with you. So here are a couple things that I would say. The first thing I would say is I'll agree with you real quickly that I don't care if people are right or wrong. I just wish that people would match the conviction with the amount of information they have. There's a lot of stuff that I will pontificate or opine on a stream that I'm I don't know, but I'll say it. I have 10% conviction on this. I don't know this 100%. It's when people act very confident and they don't have all the information. This is what drives me crazy, which I agree with you there. So here's an interesting ordeal. The media talked about this for all of 6 months and then stopped. But after Donald Trump was elected, one of the big issues that we had in the media, I'm not mainstream media, I shouldn't say that the media had was, how do we cover Donald Trump in a way that's fair, but also doesn't make us seem unhinged? Because we can't, if you keep pointing out every single thing, you seem crazy after a while. But I think the issue was we assumed that covering every single crazy thing was unfair because you're disproportionately covering somebody in a way that never has been done before. But people didn't consider, well, maybe he's acting disproportionately crazy, and so he would warrant the coverage. So what you just said there about confirming leftist stereotypes of being an unhinged person, I feel like that's a way to set the agenda. That's one of those things, that's an agenda setting thing where conservatives are well, if you act in a certain way, that means that you're unhinged. And that means that you are, you're just a crazy leftist. It's being so evil and crazy. And look, now you're confirming everything. You've got Trump derangement syndrome. And it's okay, well, hold on. Why do I feel like you guys are able to act with impunity like this? But then if anybody on my side gets upset, now all of a sudden, we have Trump derangement syndrome. To support this, to your second point, you mentioned somebody being wrong about something doesn't mean that we should be, indifferent to or advocate for them getting hurt. I agree with you principally, but man, when was the last time you heard somebody on the right say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be calling all the trans people groomers and pedophiles? Or hey,
I actually have.
yeah,
So
you've
I
seen
will
people
say,
do that?
and while else, I have. So
Okay.
I will say that while I see that groomer discourse, and as I saw it arise, I already knew where it was going, and it was
Mm-hmm.
terrible. But it became something. I think it came from like rose from sort of a legitimate questioning of certain things that I do think we should have conversations on, like sports and children transitioning and safety and ensuring that's okay. But then it grew into like I do think it's turned into a lot of outright hate.
Mm-hmm.
But I do, I feel in particular when I make the case to people where help them understand maybe from my perspective why I might have a different perspective on trans people, for example,
Mm-hmm.
where and try to represent images of trans people that are not all these like radical, crazy, people who want to like, you know, infringe on your rights or whatnot. I have seen people be able to sort of open up and push back at times, and I've seen them push back against other conservatives. So I wouldn't say that that's a fair
Sure.
assessment. And
Real quick, just
similarly,
on
I
the
have a
real quick on the conservative thing. I'm sorry. When I say
yeah,
this, I'm not talking about just random people. I mean like large, like alternative media or mainstream
leaders.
media figures. Yeah, that's who I'm talking about. Yeah, I'm sure individually,
Yeah.
as much as I love them to death, my parents are both completely brain gone MAGA conservatives. They believe every single conspiracy.
Mhm.
But I know both my parents, and they're both incredibly loving people. So it's just like it's a mind fuck to me. But
I
yeah, and
think
yeah,
that's fair that it's the media. Yeah. Okay. So
yeah.
these figureheads, I think there's an incentive structure there that's just and it's eating away, and I think it exists on both ends. But I do see it becoming like because I think the right wing media ecosystem sort of arose from building an alternative to mainstream media.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people sort of flocked to them because their views weren't really represented in the mainstream media. But they see them as truth, like the criticisms that they have of mainstream media, which I have a lot, and especially having worked and seen, in it and seen some of the issues. What has happened is that on the right side, it's all about like monetizing it through views and extremes. And people trust them more, even they probably shouldn't. And that's not a political thing. It's much more of a just the way that it works. These things don't have the same checks and balances. So for as bad as biased as media can be on the MSM side, on the independent side, it has no safety balances for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And so people believing that much more blindly and seeing that as the quote unquote truth, I think they're very much misled. And it also promotes this kind of the things that get you the clicks are the really divisive, extreme rhetoric. And the more they do it, the more extreme they get because they need to constantly amplify it. So I think that's part of what's happening there. I do think, though, part of it is also what I had an issue with on the left and what sort of drove me to be a little bit more even sympathetic or more open-minded towards somebody like Trump originally was what I was seeing reported wasn't necessarily accurate. So, you'd see a lot of things taken out of context. And so what I started doing is I would just look at the primary source and I go, okay, has he actually said it? What's the context? I'd look at that. And sometimes I felt like it was extremely misrepresented, and other times it's like, oh yeah, he totally did. That's accurate. But it loses trust, and then when somebody else comes forward and gives you this whole package of like things that you align with, then you gravitate towards that. But part of it is because both systems, I think, are terribly broken and incentivize scandal and sensationalism and, calling everybody Nazi or calling everyone a groomer or a communist.
Mm-hmm. So I agree with you that there are problems on both sides, and I used to focus on this. But something that I'm like heavily focusing on now is I don't think the problems are even within an order of magnitude of one another. I think that the right is uniquely brain rotted right now when it comes to their media apparatus. So when we say that I can give a few, I think, really big examples on this. We can do three,
Yeah.
and then we can do. I'll let you respond to this because I have a lot to say about like alternative media versus mainstream media, and then Trump taken out of context stuff as well. So here are three cases that I think like demonstrate huge just incongruencies between how both sides hold their own accountable. After the last debate with Biden, the entire mainstream and alternative media and even like fucking George Clooney, okay, like actors, were coming down hard on Biden, right? Would you agree with that? Like CNN, MSNBC, everybody was coming down hard on Biden for like a
Yeah, they
week.
call it a coup.
Sure, yeah. So we had actors writing letters, we had DNC people, we had lawmakers, we had the whole media, we had stuff getting leaked to the media, like obviously trying to get Biden to step down, right? That type of thing, I don't think would ever happen on the conservative side. Like if Trump were to go off and say something a little bit too crazy or a little bit too authoritarian, like say for instance he says people who burn the flag need to, be jailed for a year, or he wants to suspend the Constitution or whatever, any of these things, none of that. Nobody on the right is questioning that. That's my first example. And then to further the first one, to give a second one, did you by chance ever read through any of the depositions or presentations given in that Dominion v. Fox News case, the civil suit?
I looked at some of it. I haven't extensively looked at it, no.
Yeah, so I used to talk about this because some of the Tucker Carlson quotes were very funny, that he thought Sidney Powell was insane, and obviously that. So I read through, it's about 186 pages. Most of it are just slides, though. It would probably take you, I would guess, maybe 2 or 3 hours to get through. Fox News has, it's called the Brain Trust or the Brain Room, I think. They have a whole fact-checking apparatus that was fact-checking everything going on during the election fraud claims, and everybody at Fox News knew that it was bullshit. They all knew that they were all lying. And they knew this. They were confirming it in emails. Execs knew it. The hosts on the shows knew it. And everybody in the brain room knew it. But they were concerned that they were losing a lot of their audience to Newsmax. So they would continue to kind of like push these lies because they didn't want to lose everybody to Newsmax and OAN, basically. The closest situation I can possibly think of on the left of this happening would be maybe like, was it Donna Brazile who leaked the debate topics to Hillary Clinton in 2017? Which was bad and stupid and it shouldn't have happened. But I mean, again, like everybody on the left also chastised her and she got basically cast out for that. The Dominion case is insane on Fox News. I'm not aware of anything in recent history showing a left-leaning media company being so unbelievably audience captured that they're willing to engage in defamation to the point of it being obviously the largest settlement in defamation civil history. Jesus. And then the third thing would be like the Pelosi comments about Paul Pelosi. I can't think, maybe it has happened, but I'm trying to think of anything that's happened on the right to a lawmaker or something. Like sorry to bring it.
Kavanaugh, Brett Kavanaugh would probably be like an equivalent of some of the things that.
Maybe. I mean, like you could argue that people leaned too hard into the rape accusation, but I don't think anything like bad happened to him that people were like making fun of him for getting like assaulted, right?
Because nothing really happened, but there were people outside of his house and kind of a mob situation. So I do think, like, I wouldn't say.
True. I will say, though, very carefully, I will say, I agree that
yeah.
individual actors, there are people on the left that are bad, but I'm looking at like leadership. So people in media, lawmakers, right? So like the BLM riots were not good. The riots were not good. Protesting is fine, but the riots weren't good. But when people were running for office, everybody had to like say rioting is bad. We can't do this. Nobody said anything about January 6th stuff, maybe a few days after it happened. And then after that, they memory hold it. Yeah, so I don't think that the incentives are the same. I think that the right wing operates in a noticeably worse fashion, both mainstream and alternative media, in ways that are like destructive to this country right now, like are hurtling us to oblivion right now.
I have a feeling that part of that is coming from this view of themselves as the underdog. And in some ways, I do think that there's some truth to that because in terms of the institutions, they haven't really held a lot of power. They hold some power. I think people diminish the amount of power. But I think a lot of it is coming from this like narrative of like how extremely like the left is trying to destroy them. They hate their kids. Like it has been ramped up to this point. So then they're thinking, well, we can't afford to lose. So a lot of people, so when I have conversations with Republicans, a lot of times what they'll tell me is that, well, we don't like Trump. Like a lot of them will say, I don't like Trump. I don't like how he talks. I don't like his rhetoric. But I like some of his policies or a lot of his policies. And also we just need to change the equilibrium. Although, I mean, I would say, obviously, like it's not like conservatives haven't or Republicans haven't held power, Bush, Obama, then Trump, so it's not like it's been in the hands of Democrats like this entire time. But I do think that institutionally, Democrats do hold and culturally, Democrats or the left or liberals, whatever you want to label it, I mean, they do hold more power. And I think that victim status, which you see from, I think, both sides, whenever they start viewing themselves as victims, that's where you get like the aggressive extremist behavior. And I think that's where we're getting it from.
Yeah, so I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you that they feel that way. But this is another case where I think somehow the conservatives have managed to set the agenda in delusional ways. Like, you will have President Trump, who is a conservative, with a conservative Congress in the Senate and the House, and now a conservative Supreme Court, okay? And they will still say that, like, we don't have the power because of the deep state. I feel like no matter what happens or what conservatives have, they will always say they don't have enough power or they don't have power. Could you imagine for a microsecond? Also, keep in mind too, conservatives, due to the structure of our government, enjoy so much structural advantage, both in the Senate, right? Because the Senate favors land, states, over anything else, in which conservatives enjoy vast power. And because of the Electoral College, right, where there's a disproportionate weight still on some of the states. Could you imagine what conservatives would do? Imagine what January 6th would have looked like if Biden won while losing the popular vote by like 5 million votes. Like, conservatives their minds would explode. The Electoral College would be abolished overnight, right? Or imagine if conservatives lost a Supreme Court pick because Pelosi or Schumer or whoever in the Senate was like, actually, we're not going to give a hearing to your Supreme Court nominee. We're going to just hold this until the next electoral term for a year. We're just going to wait. It's like, I understand what you're saying, that they view themselves as underdogs, but I think this is part of why I'm being more brutal now, is because I don't know why they're allowed to have that opinion. They're not. They have so much structural power and advantage in terms of land in the Senate, the Electoral College, and how the voting system works for the president. And then in terms of, like, even when they do hold all the branches of government, they say they don't have any power because now they call everybody the deep state and they can't get like the most authoritarian policies passed or whatever. Yeah.
Doesn't seem to me like that has always been the case, where it was quite, and maybe I'm naive about it, but it doesn't seem to me that they've been quite as conspiratorial or like, blaming things on the deep state. I mean, I found myself getting a little bit angry during the assassination narrative because so many people right away went, this is the deep state, these are definitely CIA, because what I try to always kind of preach is, okay, like, we can't make any conclusions without facts. You can have like your feeling, but your feeling doesn't mean it's true, or it doesn't mean anything really. It's just your feeling without any kind of evidence. And so then I get called like naive or stupid or, all those kinds of things. And I do feel like it kind of shocked me to what extent that was happening. But that wasn't my sense, even like 4 or 5 years ago, that it was quite as bad. Now, maybe I was missing because I was like, encountering these things a little bit more freshly, but I wasn't seeing that. And it was this sort of movement towards, well, we have to have critical thinking and facts and, and because those are kind of things that are very important to me. I was excited that people were on both sides really were kind of interested in those things. And then you see people just really abandon them. And I'm trying to figure out, like, do you think it's like social media that has pushed that forward like that? Because part of what I'm seeing is these explosions of disinformation and just people driving crazy narratives and saying some of the vicious things. On X, where I am most active,
I'm so
obviously
sorry.
it has. I know. Well, it has. By the way, I think you had Adrian on just before.
Yeah.
Not Elon Musk for sure, because I hosted the space with Elon Musk that
Okay.
I had him on, and he sounds like him.
Wait, do you have a strong opinion on if that person is Elon or not? Do you have any idea, or?
Oh, I 100% know it's not.
Okay.
It's zero.
Okay. 0%. Okay.
Yeah,
Entered into the record. Gotcha.
So I actually had him and Elon Musk on my space at the same time. So and I already knew Adrian before that. So definitely not Elon Musk. Just sounds like him for whatever reason.
Okay.
No comment.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean, it's just, I feel like on the one hand, was there like a left-leaning bias on X? I do think there was a lot of censorship on X. I really, having looked at a lot of the evidence, and yeah, the Twitter files that I know are, people will have different viewpoints on that, but definitely there was, especially around things like COVID, and we can discuss the validity of whether certain things should be censored or not, but certainly there was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think once people had this like free speech, they went really far into the extremes. It wasn't just saying things based on, facts and logic. It's just saying whatever. And there's particularly a lot of disinformation, so verifiably false things that the people posting know are false and still post.
Yeah.
Which I'm sort of curious, like, how much do you think that has influenced the sort of the mass hysteria side of things? And two, I know that you are somebody who does support freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you're an absolutist, but you do support it. So I'm curious where you see something like Twitter or other social media platforms in terms of, making sure tackling disinformation. Should there be zero censorship? Should there be, I tend to advocate for more context, but yeah, curious to see where you fall on that.
Yeah. So let me start off on one thing. Okay. So when you mentioned the conspiracy thing, I just started writing. Okay. And I'm sure we could probably think of over 50 things. One of the issues that I have is that right now conspiracies have always been a part of political discourse, and both sides have them, and it's an issue. But again, stressing that one side is not like the other here. So just in thinking, these are all, in my opinion, fairly broad conspiracies that I think a lot of people believe in on the right, like 40% plus. A lot of the conservative movement bought into everything relating to QAnon and Pizzagate. The Podesta emails, I think it was 40% of the Republican voter base believed that there was bad stuff going on with children in a pizza parlor with Hillary Clinton and Podesta.
It's 40%.
I think that was a poll that I saw that asked about I think the question was like, do you think that satanic rituals are happening with Podesta and Hillary? I think I can try to find that poll later if you want, but it was
40% is extremely high.
It is. However, keep in mind also, I think like 70% of them don't believe in the results of the 2020 election, which is also very shocking. You've got the, just running down like every single event that's been happening in the world. There's a conspiracy to explain it now on the right. So Hawaii was like Jewish space lasers where it was set on fire intentionally for Obama to increase her.
I did it. Yeah.
Yeah. The Ukraine stuff, we've got the Azov Nazi battalion with the bioweapons labs creating genetic weapons against ethnic Russians. That big boat crash that happened in New Jersey or something, I don't remember, but that was an Israeli boat crash to try to draw away pressure from the Israeli war in Gaza. The East Palestinian train derailment, not in actual Palestine, but in East Palestine, that train derailment, that was intentional. Yeah, they were burning chemicals to poison the population. In January 6th, there were federal informants that knew everything that was going to happen, and that was set up the entire time to make Donald Trump look bad. The assassination attempt was obviously a deep state attempt on his life. That's how you can explain the Secret Service not taking it seriously. The vaccine and the mRNA vaccines were things that were put into the population to intentionally try to poison us or cause us to die. The COVID mandates were all done because the government was just trying to usurp power from the people, and they were never going to end, and passports for COVID vaccines were going to become like a permanent feature of life. All the climate change stuff is completely and totally fake, and people like George Soros and the World Economic Forum and everybody else are pushing this on us just to control our lives, and like none of it is even real. They want to make America like energy not competitive. Everything relating to the borders is because Democrats are intentionally trying to keep open borders so that they can bring in illegal immigrants to vote in elections. The election wasn't real. Like so many of these things are like, like every single component of life has like this transcendental.
I mean, that's a lot.
And that's just what I wrote like 30 seconds. Like we could probably imagine.
No, and I completely, and listen, I will, like all of these I've heard myself. Yeah. So absolutely that's true. But I don't know exactly how, I think certain things like the Russia, Ukraine stuff, that's more because I think there's a lot of Kremlin propaganda that I've tracked. I'm actually from Ukraine originally and speak Russian. So, so I've been following that pretty closely. And specifically their propaganda campaign has been, I think, more than people realize.
Oh, yeah.
So I think some of that is due to that. But also, like, I wonder two things. One, On the left, I mean, I just feel like I'm far less exposed these days, probably because I spend too much time on Twitter, X. So I probably don't see as much on the left in terms of conspiracies. Like the most recent one was that Trump orchestrated his own, fake assassination for the photo, I guess, which is just as ridiculous as some of the other things being claimed. And then I think the other part of it, why I'm thinking there is a lot of conspiracy, or to me, it seems like there's more these days. And like I'm seeing a lot more efforts to control speech. And when I was researching it, like not just, the social pressures, but a lot of laws. Right.
Whoop, thing, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of laws that were also.
Oh wait, I think
that.
your mic and your camera just reset for some reason.
Oh shit. Is that okay?
Also, just as a quick thing too, because it keeps coming up, I understand a lot of people on the left say things. All of the stuff that I'm referring to, though, are mainstream opinions in the Conservative Party, or at least like a quarter of the party believes in them, and a lot of them are pushed by conservative leadership. Like the COVID mandate stuff, the open border stuff, the election being fake. Like you've got, your Lauren Boeberts, your Marjorie Taylor Greens, your Donald Trumps. Like there are people, JD Vance. A lot of people actively push in the leadership roles, as opposed to on the left. It feels like our leadership is constantly to say, like, guys, stop doing that. This isn't true. Don't be crazy. Don't say that the assassination was a conspiracy. Isn't okay. We should never like that. Like the fact that after the assassination attempt, people are on camera with Biden saying, "Don't you think it was inappropriate that last week on a private call with donors you used the term bullseye?" Meanwhile, Donald Trump is like, they're going to take the Second Amendment away and no one can do anything about that except maybe you Second Amendment guys. Like, that's like in a public rally. Like, could you imagine if Biden had ever made that comment? Like, it would be over, Yeah.
I feel like I would have defended that more in the past, but I've seen a lot more, unfortunately, in the last few weeks even, but even before that, where there is this, like some of the things that I hear people say are just absolutely insane. I do think that part of that has come from this like building distrust towards institutions and the infringements of speech. At the same time, I think it's much more extreme that is fair, because while I think there is fair points to be made about, these institutions maybe lacking transparency or treating people unfairly, like for example, I do think that during the pandemic, there were a lot of things mishandled. But instead of sort of criticizing those specific things that were mishandled, I think it turned into this whole like, microchips, and which I don't know how many people believe in the microchip theory, but certainly some do. And I've even physically met at least one person who does.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where, like, I think you take nuggets that are true, and you take things that are, like, I do feel like conservatives were treated unfairly. I do feel like the way, like, to be a conservative in a liberal environment, like I also work in film for a long time. So I'm like, I can't, like, I think there's a lot of diversity of opinions with the people that I worked with. But in terms of if somebody was like openly conservative, they would have a really hard time socially. And
Sure.
so I think that stigmatized them so much that I think they started developing almost like a protective shell. And then they found, now that they're sort of gaining a bit of power, which I'm seeing through accounts like, say, Libs of TikTok or any of these social media entities, and through their organizations like the conservative or Republican organizations, conservative organizations, they're feeling empowered, but it almost feels like it's payback time. And it feels like they need to, these narratives are just keep getting worse because they're almost like energizing themselves, I guess.
Yeah, I guess. But so like here's like one of the issues. Just as a thing that I just don't want to leave unsaid, just real quick. When I brought up all the conspiracies before that conservatives are believing, keep in mind that on their side, they won't entertain any of these same conspiratorial notions. So for instance, you bring like, I would wager a guess that over half of conservatives, if you were to ask them, do you think that Russia is trying to significantly interfere in any social media? They'd just say no. Because they say, what, Russiagate? Fuck you. They wouldn't even entertain that, even though this is like an undeniable, we're past undeniability or deniability of that concept at this point. The idea that like the left has these like crazy powerful figures that are trying to control things behind the scenes like George Soros. Meanwhile, the people are voting for Donald Trump, who is a very well-connected billionaire, for president, and they're celebrating Elon Musk, who is a foreigner who's purchased one of the largest social media platforms and relentlessly posts sometimes deep fake AI propaganda from the right. And you've got like Kushner, who's signing, helping his company do multi-billion-dollar hedge fund deals with Saudi Arabia after coming out of office, right? Despite the fact that on their side, they have a lot of stuff where it's like, man, if any of this is happening on the left, you guys would be going insane, but they don't even like question it, right? The amount of
Again, by they I mean like their media, their
yes.
leaders, because I do see some people who are in leadership roles within conservative organizations where they, some of them, first of all, do support Ukraine. So I wouldn't say that it's like all of the conservatives are like, buying into, because I was involved even with an organization where they had a research project. It was a conservative organization, but they were doing specifically research on Russian disinformation. So I don't think that it's like true to everyone. So I think there's a bit of a split towards sort of the.
Again, I would be really careful because there's this, and I try to draw this distinction over and over and over again, because especially on social media, it's misleading. Okay. It's easy to find crazies everywhere, but when we look at leadership, right? What was the issue with Ukraine aid being passed? That wasn't a bipartisan issue. That was a conservative issue. What was the issue with passing border security? That was Donald Trump, right? I think that it's easy to find these kind of like appearing as like these splits, or maybe some Republicans like this, but they're lockstep when it comes to supporting Trump on all of this other stuff, that even if there are some people with questions, when it comes time to put pen to paper and vote on a particular thing, Congress moves in lockstep with Donald Trump. You have to. Otherwise, you're destroyed, right? You'll be the next, oh my God, Liz Cheney was on the J6 commission, right? Any Republican that like breaks step with Trump gets absolutely obliterated, right? Trump didn't want to have anything to do with Georgia when Raffensperger and everybody else didn't sign off on any of the the fake voter fraud stuff that he tried to push. Are you familiar with like when leftists complain about how if you send more police into a neighborhood, you're likely to find more crime, and so it might artificially inflate crime rates?
Yeah.
Yeah. However, like a reasonable response to that would be, hey, that's true, maybe. But also, if there's places with more crime, we probably do need more cops there too, right? Like we have a limited police budget. I don't want to spend all my money sending cops into like rich neighborhoods, but they're not going to find anything. No one is, because they don't do the same types of crime. It's just not worth it, right? One of the big issues that you run into when it comes to censorship on platforms, I think, is how do you draw rules around things when one side is legitimately more unhinged than the other, but you have to make it look like there's not like a politically biased moderating team.
Yeah, and also how do you establish like even the pandemic was just such a big part of that story, because there were certainly a lot of like insane, unhinged things that were being spread. And at the same time, there were things by, maybe people with actual expertise that weren't based on just their like fear mongering, but actually based on maybe research, or where they were, maybe if they were doctors, they were seeing things with their patients. And, and I think determining that is really difficult. And at the same time, this whole ecosystem has been challenging some of my views on, that whole idea that sunshine is the best disinfectant. Well, unfortunate it is, but the problem is what I'm seeing is that a lot of people are going into their own darkness or their echo chambers. So instead of like mixing and therefore having their ideas or perspectives challenged, what I saw, and which I was seeing in the beginning, even when Elon took over, I was seeing more, a lot of people on the left did sort of flee the platform, but some stayed behind. There was a little bit more interactivity. And then it became like, okay, so it's just people on the left, far left, hanging out with people on the far left, far right, hanging on the far right. And I think the ideas get more extreme. And that's where like the sunshine doesn't reach them at that point. So we're seeing, I think that's part of why we're seeing more of these like insane things floating around, but censoring them. Well, I mean, I think there are certain things where they're factual, like if it's something that's factually wrong, and let's say somebody's posting a picture from Russia-Ukraine war and Israel-Palestine were like really, they had so much of that where, it's maybe some deep fakes or saying that putting a fake context on a photo that was taken in a completely different location. So things like that that are verifiably false. I'm almost of the mind that because I like tools like community notes, but it's not effective, like fully effective, and it takes a long time. And some of these people block anybody who would challenge them. So it doesn't quite work. So things that are factually wrong, I would target them in a different way than somebody's opinion.
Sure.
Which is a different thing.
And I'm sympathetic towards that. But so like, here's my issue, okay? And this is another huge issue that I have with conservatives is we can't even have conversations about what censorship should look like because everybody on the internet agrees that some degree of censorship is bad. Or I'm sorry, some degree of censorship is good, right? Nobody wants like child porn posted on any social media outlet. Or I think we mostly agree that like if somebody's just spamming a racial slur at somebody, you can probably ban these people. Or people are doxing, like posting a ton of personal information, probably not good, right? I think we all agree to some extent that there could probably be illegal things obviously should probably be banned as well, right? The issue is that another problem we run into is conservatives have absolutely no way to evaluate when somebody is doing something for something that they disagree with for a potentially noble reason. That is completely gone. So, for instance, one of the things that I would say is, as somebody who's read through a lot of the Twitter files and had the unfortunate misfortune of debating some of the Twitter file authors, the Twitter files, if you read through them, when it came to, say, the New York Post story, when you read through those, all of the internal communications look like people that are legitimately trying to figure out, is this a big piece of misinformation or is this a real story? How do we handle this? Should we suppress it? Do we ban it? Do we put a warning link? We're not sure. And it looks like people that are genuinely trying to do their best to figure out how to treat a particular story. Like, people don't remember at the time, but man, you had the Cambridge Analytica story that was fucking massive in 2016, and you had like the Russian bots and everything else, and nobody wanted to be the social media platform where you had like another Joe Rogan kitty litter moment where it's like, fuck, this thing is completely and totally fake, and we let it spread, and now who the fuck knows like what the consequences are for what we've just done. Like, personally, do we have to go in front of Congress now and answer this bullshit? Morally, should we have protected our users from this? And like, nationalistically, did we just like destroy our fucking country by allowing something to spread, right? None of those assumptions are there. Instead, all of it is the worst faith assumptions possible. Oh, you're censoring and banning this because you hate us, you're politically biased, you just want to like see your own information spread, and you don't trust conservatives to do anything right. And it's like, well, fuck. And the super ironic stuff about it is none of the Twitter files showed any of that I'm familiar with. None of the ones that I read showed where they were like, yeah, fuck conservatives. They're like, we don't like these people because they're whatever, right? None of them showed that whatsoever. In fact, Taibbi even said explicitly for the New York Post Hunter Biden story, there was no evidence of any government intrusion in any part of that story. And on the conservative side, there actually has been evidence of them doing that, right? So for the Dominion story from Fox News, everybody knew that was fake, but they still presented it. Conservatives don't talk about that, but that's everything that they accused the left of doing. Or for the J6 election fraud stuff, right? Giuliani has come out and said, like for the Ruby Freeman thing, the Georgia case, he said he lied about that. I lied about all of that, but it's my First Amendment right to. He admitted that. He lied about it. And he spread that story for years, and nobody talks about that. For the Hillary Clinton versus the Trump like criminal suits, right? For the email stuff, Hillary cooperated with investigators like on every fucking level of that she could have. Donald Trump has pled the fifth and had every single person around him plead executive privilege, attorney-client privilege, whatever, on every single part of that. And now he's, before the Supreme Court getting criminal immunity to dismiss those charges, It's not even close to the same where they're accusing the left of doing these things that they have no evidence for. You don't even have a reason to think that this is happening. And then they're actually doing it on their side, and there's no accountability at all. Like what the fuck? Final example, like for Julian Assange. Julian Assange leaked a whole bunch of shit that got hacked out of DNC servers. Where the fuck were the leaks for the Republican side? There was one comment that he made publicly about it that I remember, and somebody asked him, why don't you guys ever leak anything about Donald Trump or the Republicans? And Assange's weak-ass response was, well, Donald Trump is so crazy and horrible that we don't think we could leak anything worse than what he's already done anyway. I'm like, what? Like, that was clear. Like, the Assange shit, which was which was a foreign actor doing foreign hacks, was all just targeting one side of the aisle. But somehow after all of this, people, who are center leaning, maybe people like you, people who are all conservative, all the Tim Pool centers, all these come away with like, well, yeah, there has been a lot of censorship and unfair action in media on the left, despite there being almost no evidence of it happening in a malicious manner, and despite there being so much evidence on the right of them doing it maliciously. And it's like driving me crazy. I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
I think it's fair to have that good faith interpretation of people within Twitter talking to each other, trying to figure things out. I think that's probably accurate. I do think, and it's been a while since I read through those files or kept with the story, but I do recall my biggest red flag wasn't necessarily what Twitter was doing, but more so that the government was sending these requests. Now, it's one thing if they're trying to, we're talking about counterterrorism or something like that, like there is a criminal element there. But there was much more interference, and not just with Twitter, but also like with Facebook. There's been specific memos sent of like what wording should be used or what things should be permitted or not. And in that case, while I think in court it was ultimately decided that it was not legal or a freedom of speech encroachment, I do think it comes very close to that, at least, because that influence that comes from the government, when a government goes to a private company and the government regulates that private company and that whole industry, they go, here, we want this, they're going to be more likely to feel pressure to cooperate. They might not have repercussions for not cooperating, but we don't also know that. And so there is a pressure. But to the larger point of, some of the things, I think they're valid points. I think that part of why there's such a lack of ability to concede, and where I've seen it change, was in the way that, when I had more engagement, where people understood that I wasn't also coming in bad faith when I was speaking to conservatives, it changed, because they'll be really aggressive with me. Like, I've gotten death threats and all kinds of things, from both aisles, I would say, but definitely a lot from conservatives. But those are just like unhinged, crazy people. But with a lot of people who might have started a little bit more hostile because they assume all these different things about me and my beliefs, when they saw that I was being a little bit, even if I just, like, a lot of people follow me who are on the conservative side, they're like, I disagree with you on almost everything, but I respect, because I try to show them my process of thinking and I treat them with respect. Sometimes they get a little more irritated about things, but generally I try to maintain composure, because I think about it, well, it's not just them reading it, it's also all these other people reading it. And though some of these other people are more open-minded or more willing to hear, an expanded version of whatever they already believe or know. And so I think, I guess I look at things in terms of usefulness. So if we're all just stop talking to each other, if we just vilify each other and just focus on the things that make one side worse than the other, I don't know how that actually serves any purpose, because if you don't do that, you're more likely to at least have a more open ear. Now, when you're talking about people at the top of the hierarchy, not just individuals, but you're talking about leaders in the conservative movement, that's maybe a different story, because I think they're much more aware and they're probably not as likely to change their minds off of very conservative policies or whatever narratives they're pushing if they're in the media ecosystem.
So again, these are things that are just, it's just not the same. So when you were mentioning, so for instance, the government sending takedown requests on stuff on Twitter, okay? So one, the FBI passes a ton of stuff onto social media, saying that these might be bots. We have information to believe these may or may not be things. None of those were demands for anything to be taken down. All of them were just hey, here's a heads up on this. If you want to act on it, you can. But the FBI didn't demand anything. People have mentioned there might be some soft pressure there, but I've never seen that demonstrated in any way, size, shape, or form where there's been any kind of punishment or retribution ever if Twitter. And there were tons of these accounts, over 100,000, I think, that Twitter didn't act on. The FBI sent recommendations and Twitter just didn't do anything with them. Okay. Number one. Number two, I would say that it's very interesting that the FBI was doing all of this under Donald Trump. Okay. But people say that it was the, people will say that it's just the FBI or the deep state. Why is it that whenever Biden's FBI or DOJ does something, it's because Biden is ordering it, but whenever Trump's DOJ or FBI is doing something, it has, Trump is completely free of responsibility, despite the fact that Donald Trump explicitly and overtly pressures his officers to do things. Donald Trump was on Fox and Friends saying somebody should indict these guys, somebody should investigate these guys. Donald Trump was having conversations with Comey saying, hey, I don't like the way that you're doing this shit. I'm firing you for it because you can't kill this investigation on me. I'm firing you for this, right? Donald Trump was publicly tweeting at Jeff Sessions to get him out because he recused himself in the investigation. He was pressuring Sessions. Hey, what the fuck? If Biden did any of these things, by the way, Biden has done none of these things. If Biden did any of these things, conservatives would lose their mind. But they accuse Biden of doing all of these things when there's no evidence for it, and there's evidence of Trump doing all of them and more. How is it the same? When you talk about like the government sending takedown requests to Twitter, I will admit I could only chase down so much stuff, but every individual takedown request that came from Biden's administration for like personal takedowns relating to Hunter Biden were pictures of his dick. That's the only thing that I saw. There was a tweet where there's like 4 of them, and when you look through on the web archives, usually it was like personal pictures that they were like, hey, can you guys take these down? I saw one specific request from Trump, and it was when that one comedian lady called Trump a pussy ass bitch. Donald Trump through the White House, he sent a takedown request to her. So I've only ever seen one example of a politically partisan takedown of something on social media, and that was from Donald Trump and his administration. I never saw anything from the Biden admin, from the FBI, from the DOJ that looked like politically inappropriate. I never saw that before, and I don't believe it was illustrated in any of the Twitter files. And then on the last account... Sure, yeah, maybe somewhere else. But then also on the last account, I will say when we talk about like soft pressure on social media companies or on media companies themselves, like the biggest example of that is Donald Trump. Donald Trump is literally calling into media like shows that he likes to give them interviews when he says that they're favorable. Donald Trump is on phone calls with people like Raffensperger saying, Kent, that guy's a schmuck. He wouldn't have won the election if I didn't help. You guys probably aren't going to get any help in these elections if you can't help me overturn this voter fraud. Literally making phone calls, people saying, I'm not going to help you run for this. Calling into media companies and letting them know that like, oh, I'm going to go give my interviews to other companies if you're not going to give me favorable coverage, right? Whatever pressure we might imagine the FBI is exerting by passing along information that I believe every American should want them to pass along to social media, whatever pressure there we imagine to be, Donald Trump has explicitly done it like 100-fold more, like out of the open, such that I won't even take a conservative seriously when they bring that pressure up of the Twitter stuff. Like, if you want to talk to me about that, that's fine. But you have no evidence of this. I can give you 200 pages and $1 billion settlement that shows that Fox News actually worried about this, and they changed their media coverage to actually bend their stuff to Trump's will because they were worried about this. And you have nothing. Not you personally, but just like on the conservative argument. So it's hard to take both of them seriously. Yeah, go ahead, yeah.
No, but I look, I think while I do believe that there was a certain kind of pressure, especially because there was a lot of talk at the time also, as far as I recall, about legislating certain things about social media. So there was like a political climate also that was in the background of this. It wasn't necessarily all politically motivated by the government. Like, I think maybe they felt like they had legitimate reasons for public good to put in these requests. That's very, and probably a probable case. That it doesn't mean if I think their actions were wrong, it doesn't mean that I also then have to say that the actions from conservatives were not wrong. Obviously,
sure, but the actions, I'm just saying the actions from conservatives are so much worse. I can't even begin to. Worse. Yeah, it would be like a serial rapist telling me that like, hey, you made like an inappropriate comment saying that your girlfriend's dress was too hot or whatever, like in a public dinner. And I'm like, wait, I don't even know why you're telling me this. Like, it's just like not even remotely the same. And even what you just said about legislating social media, remember, it was Donald Trump and the Republicans that were threatening the Section 230 repeal that would have essentially destroyed all like social media platforms in the United States of America, right? It was Republicans that were calling on the socialization or the nationalization, essentially, that these were public forums because they were so upset about, being censored because of the COVID or vaccine stuff. They were the ones that were threatening that Section 230 repeal that Donald Trump was speaking about so much. I don't remember Democrats talking this harshly about any of these social media platforms.
I think they were talking about it in the context of it being like a utility company, right? Where I guess taking away is because social media companies are able to do some levels of moderation without becoming like immediately publishers, and that's liable for all the editorial content. taking, I guess the way that they were looking at changing 230 or taking it away was to make it like a utility company. Then I guess that would make it so that no social media company would also be able to moderate the content
Which was
without them
unworkable.
becoming.
Yeah.
I have come to realize that having watched things recently, that it probably is unworkable because if you have a free for all, I guess you have something like 4chan, right? Which is a really awful user experience for most people, unless you're, an edgelord and whatever. I feel bad even using that word. But it's like, for most people, it wouldn't be a really good platform to engage with.
Yeah.
So you do need a level of, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so moderation is something that is definitely to some extent is necessary. It's just how much do we put in and based on what criteria? I mean, the problem that I had with Twitter 1.0, there was sort of an arbitrary feel at times to the moderation, and it wasn't always easy to predict what would get moderated and what not. So it felt like it wasn't an equal, at least on topics. That said, I would also say that in Twitter 2.0, the things that I was quite, I was more optimistic when Elon took over, if I'm honest. Like, I thought maybe there would be more transparency. I think there is less transparency, unfortunately. And I think there's I'm curious, like, do you think that, when I interviewed Elon, I also had asked him, about, because I do think that the platform now leans much further right. Part of it is because a lot of people on the left, but also I think it's because he props up certain content.
Well, yeah, I mean, we don't even have to
so
guess there. Like, could you imagine if Elon Musk, or I'm sorry, not Elon Musk, could you imagine if Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg or Jack Dorsey was posting literal blatant like right-wing propaganda on a daily basis on their accounts? Like, again, conservatives would lose their
people would be very
mind.
upset.
Yeah, no, they would lose their
100%.
fucking mind. They wouldn't be upset. They would lose their fucking mind. And then, but now we have like Elon Musk, like 2 or 3 days ago, was literally tweeting like deep fake AI videos of Kamala Harris. And I'm like Elon Musk has done to Twitter every single thing that conservatives accuse George Soros of secretly doing to any other social media platform, to where he has like privatized it. So we have far less insight now. He refuses any form of like government suggestion on anything. So the FBI, nobody has any type of like, hey, maybe you should, nope, they don't care about any of that now. He will give in to foreign dictators if they want certain stuff, banned from the platform. A huge difference is look at the treatment that Turkey was given when they told Twitter to censor shit when Jack, I think, was the owner, or when it was publicly owned and publicly traded, and Twitter said, fuck you, we're not going to censor this. And Elon Musk said, well, we have to. That's the laws in Turkey. Yeah. And I mean, like, Elon, not to, for being personal or anything, when I was tweeting out all my Trump stuff, man, this motherfucker showed up in my mentions and got my account demonetized in like 2 hours, I think. He saw me and he was like,
well, that's what I was going to bring up.
Yeah.
Because Elon's response would have been, well, yeah, like, I'm practicing my free speech, but I don't censor, liberals or leftists more than I do conservatives, right? There's very little moderation. To some extent, it's true, but then I do think your example. So when he that was very disappointing to see, because there's so many accounts on there that I think actually should be demonetized. And if you can make the argument that maybe yours should have been, but the idea of like playing favorites does make it sort of not consistent with saying there is an equilibrium. And then I think he also has now, like, the word cis, I think, is now...
Cisgender might be a slur or something. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a slur. And it actually is, because some people tweeted that when they tried to use the word cis, they got, that post got basically censored, whatever that warning label is, so it gets deboosted. So, but it's like, if you determine that the word cis is a slur, but then these other words are freely allowed, which I get bombarded with on a daily basis. Like, there's just no consistency. Because I do think, look, it's his private company. I respect he can do whatever he wants, and I don't have to stay there. I think a lot of us ended up there because, from previous, we spent a lot of years on the platform before he bought it. But okay, things change. It's a private enterprise, but it's that lack of transparency and consistency that I think is deeply problematic. So yeah, like seeing your account, you can make an argument that your account should have been, take the ads taken away because it was quite explosive, not advertiser friendly, but there's so much content on there that's not advertiser friendly, and it's just because somebody happened to tag your account at the
Yeah.
right moment.
And I would say that there's like, because if you want to demonetize an account, I mean, that's fine. I can understand if you think that it's violative or whatever. But when Elon retweeted to mine, I think the thing that he said, I wish I had the exact words in front of me, but he was like, this content is probably not friendly for advertisers or something. He said that. And then I think my account, I got an email like a couple hours later saying that my account was demonetized. I'm like, okay, that was quick. But then when people are digging up, me included, all of these like Dave Rubin tweets and these, I think Matt Walsh tweets, other people had said horrible things about the Paul Pelosi stuff. It was insane. And then I tagged Elon to these. Elon's response was, oh, well, I can't do anything about that. That's for advertisers to determine. I'm like, wait, what? Why the change in stance now? It seemed like you had a really active stance before, but now all of a sudden you're like, yeah. The fact that there's like so clearly a hardcore partisan bend from the owner of the platform is something that I don't think we've ever seen demonstrated in any social media platform before. But again, because he's a conservative, conservatives are completely and totally silent on it. And it's like, yeah.
Well, yeah, I think they're afraid of having bad relations. I mean, like I have a more somewhat friendly, not friendly, but like, I've had a positive relationship, I guess, with him, and there is a part of me, but at the same time, like he does follow me, and I remember it was interesting because he followed me around the same time I was criticizing him quite a bit. And I was quite surprised by that. And I said, well, thanks for following me. Just so you know, I won't, doesn't mean I will stop criticizing. And he wrote me back, cool. And even when I did the interview with him, I said, it doesn't like, I'm not going to like do gotchas, but it doesn't mean I'm not going to ask some challenging questions. He's like, well, there was no like desire to like control it in any way. But at the same time, it's like, I think a lot of people are like I'm trying to figure out the balance of like how much criticism is going to serve in a positive way versus not.
Well, but like, so.
And I think, yeah.
Okay, so here's my issue, right? So I wrote down a couple things too, because you mentioned something before, and I'm bringing this in now. You said that conservatives are nice to you when you treat them with respect. And this is something that I'd kind of like learned, obviously, over the past year, as I've had more probably mainstream opinions or appearances than I've had in my entire career over the past year, over that like treating them with respect. But I think something I'm realizing is it has nothing to do with treating them with respect or not. It has to do with pushing them on certain ideas. And if you push on some things, you are instantaneously persona non grata. It doesn't matter if you're respectful or not. What matters is that you have to carry a few lines. And as long as you carry a few lines, they'll be nice to you. One of those lines that you have to carry and you've got to amplify is that both sides do bad things. And that's really important to know. You can never suggest or imply that they're worse on these things. Anytime you have an example of a conservative doing something bad, you also have to show how the left does it just as bad. Or if a conservative does something bad, like you said earlier, it's because the left did these things, over and over and over again. And it's like, okay, that's one, it's bullshit because the problem isn't the same on both sides. Conservatives are clearly unhinged. But I think two, the second issue is conservatives are never expected to do this ever. And there is, as much as it sucks to...
I think they are. I don't think that's true.
Can you give me an example of a single mainstream figure on the conservative side in the past 8 years ever being very critical of something important to Donald Trump?
I'm saying expected to. I've seen. I'm having a hard time like specifically recollecting a specific person, but certainly there have been high figures. No, but even Ben Shapiro in your debate conversation with him, he acknowledged certain things about Trump and his actions and January 6th, and so there wasn't like zero acknowledgement.
There was zero point acknowledgement. He said that Donald Trump tried to overthrow the government of the country, but he failed, so it was okay. That's not a real criticism. That's insane. And they would never give anything. Look at how many conservatives are all of a sudden saying that the Democratic Party got cooed because of the primary process that are utterly silent on January 6th. Like, it's not even remotely the same. It's not even close to being the same.
Well, they're seeing it differently. I think also the election, stolen election narrative, I think there's different viewpoints on that because there's the ones where they're like the voting ballots were rigged, so that's like the more extreme. And then there is like the ones who are like, well, the media, was constantly misleading people about Trump, and that's a harder one to fully like disprove.
Sure.
So I
However,
think
that's not, most of them believe that the election, there was voter fraud. Over half of them believe in voter fraud, not the media
on
narrative.
voter fraud.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. And,
I mean,
and
I agree with you that they do require that you allow some concessions where it's like, yeah, like the left does this. And I do find that anytime I criticize anything on the right, and I am not being like, so like, I'm not being tribal when I do it. I'm just calling it out because I'm seeing it. And by now, people who follow me should kind of know that that's what I do, and it's not something because I'm like hate the conservatives or hate the Democrats or whatever. The thing is, I do immediately get like that response that you're speaking of, and I have sort of conceded many times in conversations where I would concede that only because. Yes, you're right that it's often not equivalent. But if I don't concede it, I find that then there is no openness. Whereas when I concede a little bit on the left, I find that they'll concede certain things on the right.
So this is my issue, and this is why I've become so much more aggressive now, is I agree with what you just said, that as long as you're willing to make some concessions, they'll be listening to you more. But that's because I think you've bought into their game, or at least I was buying into their game of saying like, yeah, we all have problems. But it's not the same. It's not even remotely the same, and I don't think anybody should pretend that it is the same. There is nothing on the left that's to the equivalent of the vaccine conspiracies on the right. There's nothing on the left that's the equivalent of the election fraud conspiracies on the right. There's nothing on the left that's to the equivalent of the character assassination of like Fauci that exists on the right. There is nothing on the left that's the equivalent of the Hillary Clinton kill list, the fact that she sold all of our uranium to Russia on the left. There's no equivalent conspiracy to the idea that Obama was born in Kenya, which is how Trump first got into politics, was spreading that with Sheriff Joe Arpaio, or whatever, with the birth certificate, the birther thing. There is no equivalent conspiracy on the left. None of these things are equivalent. So the idea that in order for me to get a conservative to even acknowledge, and by the way, of all those conspiracies that I just brought up, no conservative will acknowledge any of those as being conspiratorial. Well, I won't say no, but like very, very, very few. None of the thought leaders will for sure. And when I say thought leaders, I'm also including all of the centrists in there as well. All of the Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, whatever, these people that say that they're Brett Weinstein's.
To be a centrist.
Sure, the Brett Weinsteins, the Joe Rogans. None of these people will admit that everything about the vaccine shit was bullshit. Everything about the Dominion voter fraud stuff was bullshit. Everything about the election fraud stuff was bullshit. Everything about COVID lockdowns being done as the government trying to steal all your shit and doing it evilly. All of it was bullshit, and all of it was asserted without evidence. But none of them will even admit to that. But then when I'm having a conversation with them, I have to admit that potentially some of the rhetoric used on the left is harmful, or potentially this thing about Trump was a little unhinged. No, why would I even begin to admit that when these people aren't willing to concede on some of the largest conspiracies with almost no backing whatsoever? Like that false equivalence to me just like drives me insane, I think.
You think they believe it sincerely?
The actual content creators themselves, no. Like Tim Pool is absolutely a malicious actor who is a fucking liar about everything that he does. Dave Rubin, absolutely. Dave Smith, Joe Rogan, I don't believe that these people believe these things. Rogan might be dumb enough to. The other guy said, these people do not believe these things. They know that they're fucking full of shit. And you can tell because of the way they present the facts. There are ways that people can talk about things. It's like, oh, I know you're fucking lying because there's no way you would know this and not this, right? But the actual people that follow the content, I think they probably do believe it. I think they do believe it sincerely because their content leaders are like telling them to, and they provide like good enough bullshit arguments to believe it. So I think that the line level soldier, the foot soldiers believe it, but the content creators themselves knowingly fucking lie 100%.
Was somebody so one thing I heard you say is that Trump is definitely knows that the election wasn't stolen.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious, on what basis do you know that he knows?
The basis would be how many times he repeated knowingly a lie about election fraud that had been debunked to him just days before. It could be the stuff about the Georgia voting stuff. Attorney General Barr told him that it was bullshit. The head of the cyber investigation security agency or whatever told him that it was bullshit. Everybody in Georgia, Raffensperger, the election investigator, told him that it was bullshit. Every single person in his administration told him this is bullshit. People that were all incentivized to lie because they could have, held on to power. His vice president told him it was bullshit. Every single person told him that all of these claims are bullshit, and he repeats them, a lot of them, to this day. Right? That Ruby Freeman thing.
They took accountability. At least they took some. They were
Nobody-
at least honest.
Nobody.
The other people.
Who
No?
took accountability?
Well, you're saying that when he was speaking with them, they told him that what he was saying was bullshit, right? So at least they weren't like participating in the lie. So that shows a level of like accountability, or at least honesty or integrity on their parts, right?
Yeah, but like these people are now persona non gratis in the Republican Party.
Sure.
They've been cast out, right? Look at, like, he's running again without his past vice president. Like, what the fuck? And the reason why is because Pence wouldn't help him coup the government, wouldn't help him steal the election, right? And when you have a guy who's got, the president of the United States probably has more legal counsel available to him than probably any other individual in the world, save for maybe some like C-level execs and some of these like huge probably more than any other person. When he has to go and shop for his own personal legal team because he knows that everything is bullshit, and he's trying to find people to manufacture these theories, the Eastmans, the Powells, the Giulianis, right? He know that he's full of shit. He knows he's full of shit. He hasn't been shown evidence for any of these things, and he continues to repeat the same debunked claims. If you want to take the position that maybe he still believed it, that can be a position you can take, but then you simultaneously have to say that he should be institutionalized because the man is experiencing psychosis to such an extreme degree that he can't tell
Definitely
fact from fiction.
narcissistic. I mean, definitely narcissistic personalities. Like, you definitely see that where they genuinely, it's crazy, but like they genuinely believe those things. At the same time, I have seen a lot of evidence of where Trump specifically lies. So, and he does it quite convincingly. So, because I watched that, I'm a little more prone to thinking that he is like aware. I also don't really think he's stupid. And I think he's not as sharp as he was, many years ago, but I think he's probably more capable of understanding the situation. I mean, I do think you make a good solid point where argument that if all these different people around him were saying this is not true, for him to continue to claim that is either a lie or at least some form of delusion, which is not a great quality to have in somebody who's a president or a presidential
But
candidate.
I don't think it's illusion. Remember, like he told Rosen and Donahue, he's like, listen, when he was trying to get them to write that fake letter to the states to say that they were investigating voter fraud, I think the quote was, Donahue wrote, and he testified to this under oath, he said the quote was, just call it corrupt and leave the rest to me, right? That's what he wanted them to say. He told Pence, when Pence was saying, I don't think I can actually overturn the election, he told Pence, you're too honest. That's your problem, right? These are quotes from Donald Trump. Like, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. Absolutely, he does. Like,
So what is the solution to this? Because I am hearing like I definitely have a lot of people who are conservatives who are like really don't like him, but some are voting regardless because they want power, and some are not voting. They're not necessarily going to go vote Democrats either, but they're not going to vote for Trump. But but in general, we have this situation where there's a lot of populism in general on the rise everywhere, and certainly in the US, but like in other places as well, Canada, Europe. And then you have a lot more sort of conspiratorial thinking and more extremes. And yes, and a lot of them are on the right. Okay, so what do you do about it?
I mean, so one thing that sucks is that, well, one thing that has to happen is we have to have faith in our institutions. Without that, we have nothing, okay? And I think that a big part of that, kind of like the second broad topic that, I don't know if we'll have enough time to get into or not, but you brought up kind of like this alternative versus mainstream media. I think there's been a huge problem is that online, there's a lot of things that I say that in my mind are huge red flags for why you should never, ever, ever listen to somebody, right? So as soon as somebody says like, well, I'm nonpartisan, I try to do a lot of research, I try to come up with opinions of my own, I try to be critical of both sides. Anytime I hear somebody say this, which are all things that I strongly believe, I would say this is a red flag. This person is always a fucking conservative every single time. It's a spineless fuck who's going to criticize the left infinitely and carry water for Trump infinitely. Every single time it is the case, okay? All of your Tim Pools of the world. The issue is that we have to bring back like healthy, real skepticism and not the bullshit skepticism that like centrist conservatives have sold people online. Like when people tell you like, oh, we need to be skeptic of the government. What they're saying is you can't trust anything the government says, and you need to trust everything that I say, even though I've been proven to be a fucking liar over and over and over again with no accountability, and I'm selling you vitamin and dick supplements. And even though the government has literal accountability mechanisms, whether you're talking Office of Inspector General, watchdogs, or whether you're talking about the fact that we can vote them in and out, or whether you're talking about, you know, congressional hearings and subpoenas, everything else, right? There are ways to hold them accountable, right? Which a lot of people have been exploring and a lot of people have done. And on their side, there is no accountability, but for some reason they can call themselves skeptic because what? They're not skeptical of anything. They'll believe anything that an alternative media person tells them, and they'll disbelieve anything that comes from the government. Like somebody will tell me in the same breath, I don't trust, you think I'm going to trust shit from the fucking State Department? Let me tell you why that's bullshit. And then they'll pull up a Russia Today article. Are you fucking kidding me? Like this is not skepticism in any size, shape, or form, you know? Or they won't believe something, you know, I'm not going to believe something that Zuckerberg tells me, but let me go ahead and quote Elon Musk, who has an actually huge financial incentive in the outcome of, you know, things related to Twitter, or Donald Trump, who is a billionaire who is currently facing multiple criminal convictions, right? Who has a huge invested outcome in the particular way that certain things turn out. Like, why do you trust these people unskeptically, but you're infinitely skeptical on one side, right? Selective skepticism isn't skepticism at all. It's insanity. Yeah.
Well, that's the same criticism you just gave of somebody claiming to be a centrist. And I'll say, like, I do probably am. I'm definitely a liberal in a lot of my views, and I think I have some progressive views. I probably have some conservative views. I think what makes me a centrist is that I'm not married to one thing entirely. I know I'm not a conservative because I just don't share the same values for the most part. But I do think that if somebody says they're a centrist and they're willing to, you know, diligently criticize both sides, right? And I think they are a centrist.
Is there anybody in media that you think stands like that right now, like a centrist who accurately and evenly criticizes both sides? Yeah.
There's a few like social media accounts, and there's a guy I like, Gowinder, I think is his name. He writes like really interesting things about like how social media works, and I find that he's probably a pretty solid centrist. I've seen a lot of people that I first encountered in my journey, because I was criticizing the left more in the beginning, because that was the group that I was most familiar with. I just didn't even know conservatives. So for me, I was exposed to them. So I was like, I believe that I have a responsibility to criticize my group, my tribe, to make it better, because I want them to be better.
Sure.
Not because I want them to disappear. I want them to improve. I want them to be better. And but then as a result, I was embraced by like a lot of like centrists and also conservatives. But on the centrist side, what I've seen is sort of starting as kind of this anti-woke thing, which I see a lot of people where they gravitated to far more extreme positions than when they started. So I think a lot of the people that I probably viewed as more centrists have gone further right.
Yeah.
Because you're right. Like if I look at their speaking points, I only see them at this point criticizing the left. I never see them criticizing the right, where there is obviously a lot of criticism. But there are some people who I feel have remained more consistent. There are a few people I was just exchanging messages with too, because we were almost like a support group for each other, because we're seeing like we're all able to kind of see what has happened, where a lot of the people we respected in the past have gone to more extremes, have gone further right, and aren't willing to sort of criticize. I have to criticize 50% of the time the left and 50% the right. More so like when I see something that crosses my radar that I really don't agree with, I've probably become more critical of the right more recently because I just see so much of it. So
Sure.
I'm probably disproportionately critical right now of the right than I am of the left. But that's only because I'm seeing less of the left, especially on social media.
Sure. I guess if you were to think of like, imagine like Tim Pool, Jimmy Dore, Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, Elon Musk, Jordan Peterson, all these people who, some of these people will say they're conservative now. A lot of them will say they're kind of like more centrist or whatever, right? How many of these people have
Lex
talked?
would say.
Yeah. How many of these people have talked about how scary censorship is on social media platforms and how important the First Amendment is and how we need to be careful, you know, that like the left doesn't whatever take over, you know, all this shit. How many of them have made comments about the fact that Trump reiterated again recently that people that burn the flag should be jailed, right? Imagine if Joe Biden said
I
something like that,
posted
right?
about.
Yeah, this is
I posted about that recently.
that's
Yeah.
a big First Amendment question there, right? Donald Trump has also said multiple times that he would suspend the Constitution, which the president absolutely cannot do. He would suspend the Constitution to go after voter fraud. That's like no Democratic leader has made any statement even remotely as scary as that when it comes to the Constitution or like First Amendment rights. Trump says over and over again, the media is the enemy of the people, right? Like what the fuck? Like, but they're all silent on it.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you there because it's been a major source of disappointment for me lately. Because even with, okay, so I'm also generally more pro-Israel, and at the same time, I see, so on the censorship front, like I have to adhere to my principles and be consistent. So, for example, I'll use the Delta story. So the flight attendants who had the Palestinian flag pin. It wasn't against Delta rules, and maybe Delta should change the rules, which they have. And I think that was probably the right step. But like I certainly, and I saw people like, you know, basically doxing them, their photo, their names, really advocating for their firing. I think that is inconsistent with any kind of principled stance on free speech, because you can't just hold on to that position when it serves you or when it's being used against you. And unfortunately, I have seen a lot of people when they can weaponize censorship in some way or cancel culture in some way, which is something that I've talked a lot about against. You know, that is something that I'm seeing being weaponized, and there is no real criticism for most people. So that has been like an unfortunate lesson, I guess, to me in the last while. And I think you have to be, you can't be, you can adjust your principles if you think, okay, well, okay, I thought I was an absolute free speech absolutist. Maybe not. I think that on perhaps calling, you know, I think it's a violation of speech right to call for violence. That is very specific to meet the legal threshold. So I have to say, you know, I want, hey guys, go to Destiny's house and do this horrible thing to him. That would be, then that's like not protected. But if I say, you know, Destiny should die, sorry, because
You're fine.
that's
I've had a lot worse recently. Don't worry.
I'm sure that's actually protected speech. And part of that is like, even I was having a conversation with my brother the other day, and he was just being like super, he's not going to like that I said this. But he, you know, he was using expressions of this time, and sometimes that's just how people vent. So that becomes really difficult to like legislate. But at least if you have a more firm, like, for example, I think that cheering for a terror group that's a recognized terror group should be illegal speech. Well, if I believe that, I have to be consistent. So with when others go infringe the same rights, maybe for a group that I support. Hopefully, I don't support any terror groups.
Sure. Do you think that, okay, so one of the strong statements that I will make when I'm arguing with people or when I'm looking at like the media landscape, do you think that that there are reasonable minds that could disagree on going forward, if you had to vote, you're in a ballot box, gun to your head, you have to vote for one between Kamala or Trump, that there are reasonable arguments that can be made for Donald Trump right now?
I think the people who aren't like completely captured, say, by the MAGA movement or whatever, and aren't just wanting power, I think the reason they would vote for Trump is because they think, and they may be wrong, that maybe on some aspects like international policy, for example, they think he might be serving them better, or maybe like enforcing the border. I can make a counter argument why that might not be the case, but I can see that they might think that way, and they might say, well, I don't like this, this, and this. I think they would probably be fairly unaware of exactly what happened on January 6th in terms of like Trump's actions. I think a lot of people are really poorly informed on that.
Sure. But I'm saying, let's say, assuming a person had like a strong command of like all the facts of like things that have happened, right? Do you think that like a reasonable person with a command of all the facts could come to the conclusion that Trump would comport more, I guess, with the fundamental values of this country going forward for the next 4 years versus Kamala Harris?
Not overall values, but I think, well, and also my values are not the same as somebody on the
No,
on the
I'm saying
conservative
American
side. Yeah,
values. So like respect for rule of law,
American.
respect for, the
Yeah.
Bill of Rights, respect for, the like kind of like core fundamental features of the country of America.
It's a good question. I am not. I don't think I'm entirely sure.
Okay. I think that's
Because
I don't
I know
think
that my own. Yeah,
I would say that's clearly and obviously assuming that if we say like that
I know
January
you
6th
think
was an
that.
insurrection. Yeah, but like I don't think a reasonable mind could disagree. I don't think there's any collection of facts that could point you to Trump versus Kamala. I think it's like beyond obvious. Like there might be some edge
I guess if I
cases.
believed that, yeah, I guess if I believed, if I was conservative and I understood like the facts and I was like, okay, I believe that January 6th was definitely an insurrection that he played a role in. If I thought all of that and some of the other things, um, yeah, I don't think I could vote for someone who, in that case, even if he aligned with my other values, I don't think I could vote for someone who would like
Coup the government.
undermine. Yeah, I mean well, and one thing that's been argued with me because I was having some debates on this, and I'm not an expert on January 6th at all, so I don't have like a super strong opinion. But but I was trying to argue that, I mean, essentially, the other person I was arguing as was saying, well, they couldn't have had the people who were involved. They couldn't have had a sense that they could like overtake the government just by their actions. That like it's not a legitimate viewpoint. And I guess my response to that, well, I don't think you have to. It's just motive. It doesn't have to be a realistic outcome.
Sure, and you also don't even have to look necessarily at like the riots and the violence that happened on that day. Like, are you aware, for instance, that wait, are you Canadian or are you American?
I'm Canadian and I lived in New York for a long time.
Damn Canadians.
Sorry.
Okay. No, you're good.
I know you were gonna like be triggered as soon as I said I was Canadian.
Yeah, I know. You all are too interested in our politics. But like in the United States, citizens don't actually have a
Because
right.
you guys affect us so much.
Yeah,
That's
no,
why
that's
we're
true.
interested.
Yeah, we
Plus,
affect
it's
everybody. Yeah.
entertaining. Yeah.
In the U.S., you're not
That's true.
actually you're not guaranteed the right to vote for president, right? You don't. No citizen actually votes for president in a state. You vote for the slates of electors that then the states have agreed go on to vote for president. Like, are you aware that Donald Trump for like over a month had this whole plan to like send in fake electors from the 7 states, the 7 swing states that he lost, and they had groups of people that falsified. They said that they were the duly chosen electors of those states. They transmitted those votes to Congress, and that's what January 6th was all about. When Donald Trump says only the lawfully slated electors should be counted, and when he was pressuring Pence to choose like the election for him, that's what that whole plot was. It was the fake elector slates that they'd sent in on Eastman and Chesebro's theory that they wanted Pence to choose on election day. That was like the coup. That was the plan.
That's in the indictment.
That's in not only is that in the indictment, that's in the J6 Commission report, which is like 847 pages. Every single person that testifies to this agrees. There is overwhelming like media reporting on like every single aspect of this. Nobody denies it. Nobody even denies it, right? This is why when Donald Trump was defending himself from this, Donald Trump said, I need actually criminal immunity from the Supreme Court. And that's why that was the only defense that he said. That's why every single time any of the conservatives try to defend themselves on this, it's Giuliani saying, like, oh, like on the Ruby Freeman stuff, I lied about the voter fraud, but I have absolute immunity for it. Or it's why in the media, people like Giuliani or Powell would say there's voter fraud, but in front of a judge, they weren't alleging fraud. They just said there were procedural issues. Or it's why big cases.
How many conservatives do you think know this?
I don't know how many know this, but like, none of what I'm saying. This is like, by the way, if you want to bully people to debate me on this, this is like the mantle that I've taken up now, because everything that I've just said is beyond, like, none of this is factually disputed. Like, it happened. I can show you pictures of like all the certificates of like the fake elector slates. There's videos of them trying to go to City Hall because you have to do the certification there. Yeah, none of it is contested. And like, yeah, Pence and everybody else like all confirm this. Like, it's just.
Well, I started off thinking that it was a riot. That was my position originally. Not a very strong, because like I said, I don't feel like I was that informed. I'm trying to take a super strong position when I'm not.
Sure.
But I will say that as I've learned more and heard more over time, and my position has shifted towards, yeah, there was, it wasn't, I certainly don't think every person who participated in this was, trying to overthrow the government. I do think there are some people who were, pushed in or whatever,
Yeah.
or made stupid mistakes, or were writers essentially. I think some people definitely came with the intention, whether it was feasible or not, they had the intention. Some of them had weapons. And then I think the part about Trump's involvement, I think was not something that I was that aware of for a while. And that makes a big difference, because then it's like, I think the narrative has always been about the people at the Capitol. And it wasn't so much about what Trump's actions. I think that what most people are aware of is that Trump, and I didn't think he handled it well, right?
Yeah.
Based on what I knew at the time, where it's like, okay, why did it take him so long? And I think he used language that was pretty like irresponsible. So that was my view at the time. And I think a lot of people only know that part of the story. I don't think, because 860-page, commission report, the indictment, like very few people actually go and read it. So as a result, I think there's a lot of people on both the left and the right who are just completely unaware of these facts.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree with that. Absolutely. I agree with it in part. I would have questions for like, well, when you were there protesting, not you personally, but when a conservative is there protesting, when your president is saying over and over again, Pence needs to do the right thing, what exactly do you need him to do? What are you guys asking him to do? That's a very strange thing to say on the day that they're counting the votes. But I will say that my issue, circling all the way back to kind of what came up in the beginning of this, is that somehow it feels like conservatives are able to set the media agenda. And I don't know how or where that comes from, because like a lot of the media agenda is like kind of run by liberals or people on the left. But so for instance, you tell me that you're not aware of any of this relating to like these false slates of electors, which I agree. But have you heard of Burisma?
Yeah.
Why the fuck do you even know the name of that company, right? Like the reason why is because the business dealings of Joe Biden's son, like 10 years ago, we all know about that. How the fuck? Why would you even know the name of a fucking energy company in Ukraine, but we don't know about like false lights of electors from the president of the United States, right? And I think that it's not the people's fault. It's not like an average conservative's fault or even an average centrist. It's like somehow the conservative media was able to dictate the agenda on all of this. And I don't know how that happened. That's just that the discourse control is mind-blowing to me.
Yeah, I'll agree. I agree with that. I think I see all these very specific narratives floating around. And I think also these narratives a lot of times are easy and simplified. So versus like an 860-page document, and plus anything that's going to be published in the mainstream media is immediately like basically, dismissed. I also didn't see that much in the mainstream media about those things, because I think at that point the media sort of moved on. And I think because of the way they made January 6th an insurrection right away in the media narrative. And so I think a lot of people looking at it were like, well, this seems like a riot, right? And they didn't make at the time, and probably didn't know all the facts yet about, Trump's inner involvement and all those things that were like later investigated. So that part of the story really wasn't represented in mainstream media either. So all you were seeing is like, people that seem to be behaving, and I know the comparison is constantly made to BLM, but like we said, like BLM is like, okay, most people were protesting peacefully, and some group of people were like burning down businesses and doing illegal acts. So it was easy to look at January 6th through that same lens.
True.
When that was all the facts you were getting. And even like, I won't say, but there's even certain people definitely very much on the left who were present in a reporting capacity, and in my conversations with them, they're like, yeah, like it was more, they viewed it as a riot because they were viewing it just from that position of like the people at the Capitol. When you view it from the position of Trump's involvement, that does change things. But I think that story was just not represented. And I think with conservatives, I think this is the other part, and it's just general human nature as well, is like once a story becomes your truth, because it's been repeated so much, then at that point, it's like no matter if new things come in, I just don't think people like really pay attention to it. They dismiss it, they ignore it, they find ways to justify because their inner narrative has been so embedded. And so I think that probably also plays a role as to why.
Yeah, and so I agree with you on the civilian, on the citizen, on the ordinary person side of things, okay? And I guess the argument that I'm trying to sell to you is that this didn't happen on accident, and it didn't happen just because the left fucked up, right? Can you close your eyes? Do you remember the picture in Kenosha of I think it was a black CNN on-the-ground reporter standing in front of a car dealership that was on fire, and the tagline below was like "fiery but mostly peace." You remember this, right? Yeah. Right. So you remember that, but then when we look at the J6 stuff, right? What was the mainstream media on the right doing for January 6th? They were Tucker Carlson put together in conjunction. So Tucker Carlson was the largest right-wing news host in America on the largest mainstream media network in America, owned by one of the wealthiest media conglomerate owners in America, right? None of what I just said is conspiracy. It's all true, right? You've got Tucker Carlson, Fox News, Rupert Murdoch, right? He put together a video getting footage that was passed along from, I believe it was Jim Jordan in Congress, is where he got the footage that was passed along. And Jim Jordan, I think, said he would make that all available. He never did, by the way. That was a lie. He never made all of it. And Tucker Carlson put together a video showing that there was no violence and all of them were basically just walked in. The cops just let them walk through. They walk through the Capitol Hill. That's it. So when we think of like, well, what does an average person, like an average conservative think? Well, they think these things, but there are reasons why the left is messed up and blah. It's like, yeah, the left has messed up for some things, but nobody talks about like this intentional subversive element of right-wing media where it's not on accident that conservatives have these opinions. And it's not just because the left it messed up. It's because there is a huge infrastructure on the right that is dedicated to propagating this misinformation. The Ray Epps story was launched into orbit from everybody giving way too much oxygen to some old fucking retard at a thing saying we should go into the Capitol, whatever. No other information about him being directly involved, right? There's the Ray Epps thing that was written about, I think by Revolver first. And then you've got the footage that Tucker Carlson put together with coordination from an elected lawmaker in Congress, right? And then we turn around and we go like, okay, well, what happened here, right? This is like the equivalent to like a what was she wearing thing. It's like, well, what happened here? Well, the left was a little bit unhinged about some things. So that's why conservatives believe this completely and totally fake fabricated narrative that came from the largest media network in the United States by the #1 news host that was getting information from an elected lawmaker in Congress on the Republican side. Like, wait, what? How does that justify that? You know, like if anybody wants to talk about like crazy media narratives, where's that story, right? Where's the story of the fact that the richest man on the planet bought the largest news media platform and now posts exclusively right-wing content? Why is nobody talking about that on the conservative side, right? That's the stuff.
Well, it's balanced, right? Yeah. No, it's balanced now. And by the way, people say they have Trump TDS, Trump derangement syndrome. I kind of have Tucker derangement syndrome, if I'm honest. Well, I'm pretty upfront about that. I do find that people like him and others in that ecosystem, I'm not going to defend any of them because I feel like I know that they're lying, right? Like there's a lot of segments but they're very good at it too. Like Tucker in particular, he's very skilled. Like I'm going to give him all that credit. I think he's very skilled in how he spins and frames his narratives and he's good with words. But I would catch him, first of all, he's hard to debunk because you kind of have to go line by line.
It's a lot.
So I can't just say he's lying. It's a lot. And so, and with him, it's like, it's obvious. Like there's no way either you're doing absolutely zero prep, but then even if you're doing zero prep and you're like, I'm just a curious person and I'm asking questions, he reinforces these narratives. So it's clearly much more intention. And I see it with the other, I have definitely grown. Like if we had this conversation 2 years ago, I might have been more defensive of this. I think I've seen what it has become and I'm far less defensive of it because I see how you're right. I think there is this ecosystem and it is much worse. Like, so I criticized the mainstream media because I do think there are certain biases in terms of which stories get covered, how they're talked about, the language that's used. It doesn't mean that every single story is wrong. It doesn't mean that they're lying. I think sometimes there might be a bad failure in a journalist. I do think they pick stories based on, look, most journalists in mainstream media are left leaning, and that's already going to affect what stories are going to be told. Just
For
even
sure.
that part,
Yeah.
right? So I think there's
Can I
room
even
for
just real
improvement.
quick
Now,
on
yeah,
what you just said there, right? One of the biggest
yeah.
reasons why I hate all of the conspiracy theory, whatever mongering, is that you don't get to have like really important conversations. So like, I think that there are big problems with a lot of mainstream media for what you just pointed out. And it's the fact that there's a lot of ideological congruity inside the newsrooms, right? But you can't talk about that because what we have to talk about is like, well, okay, did George Soros actually like beam down to the CNN studios today to hand them their script that was Bezos approved about like the new how we're going to eat crickets tomorrow? Like that's where all the conversation. There's absolutely no, there's no sanity on the right when it comes to the criticism. So we don't get to have any good conversations. It's just about like, is Anderson Cooper eating children, before he goes live to tell his, state-sponsored propaganda for the day.
Yeah, and look, with my background, so I was part of a cancellation campaign over something completely stupid, right? And it was something on the, from the left. And there's a part of me that obviously like I didn't like that happening, and I was just seeing a lot of like really radical behavior, and then I started hearing stories from all sorts of people, both on the left and the right, where they were just targeted over like ridiculous things, and I do feel like very unfairly. Sometimes it's fair, but a lot of times it was an overreaction. And I hated that behavior, and I look at it in terms of behavior. But one thing I will say, I feel like there has been a shift on the left where there's a little bit more acknowledgement of the craziness that had gone on with those things. And even when I told people that I knew in my life what had happened to me, and they were all like pretty left, they laughed because they thought the accusations were just so ridiculous. I was called a white supremacist, and which is the most absurd thing in the context of me. Based on my background, but it was just, and also based on the story itself. But so people responded in a pretty proportionate manner, which was to laugh at it because it was so ridiculous. And I've been able to have really much more rich and deep conversations with people on the left in the more recently, where about all the same issues, by the way, that a lot of conservatives care about, like whether it's immigration or trans issues. I mean, people do care, but but you can have a reasonable conversation about it. And you're right, because it's stopping us from having, like if they want to bring up something about sports, or I'm kind of undecided about, for example, children transitioning, because I really see both sides of that argument. And I get attacked for seeing both sides of that argument all the time. I do have a particular leaning there, but at the same time, like I want to hear really good arguments from people. That's why I think it's important for us to talk, because I want to be able to, like, I don't know, might have something wrong or might not have all the information. Somebody might present better information. And so that's why I think it's so important for us to be talking. But you're right, when we get so distracted by these like crazy things, I guess, and I've been feeling especially frustrated, I think, because I've been calling out a lot of the conspiratorial stuff. I posted about, what's his name? The guy who like who's the most conspiratorial guy on the right?
All of them.
Alex Jones.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Keep
fair,
in mind,
but
hold on,
Alex
wait.
Jones,
Just as a quick like a sanity check. So you just said that you feel like Alex Jones is the craziest guy on the right. Okay, that has to be paired with the acknowledgement that I think 2 weeks ago, Joe Rogan, the largest podcaster I believe on the planet, said that he feels like Alex Jones is right about a surprising amount of things. Right. That's where we're at right now.
Stupid.
Yeah, that's where we're at right now.
And I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And I hear that. I'm like, have you counted? Because I bet you, I think Alex Jones just throws a whole bunch of things out. Something sticks. People forget all the things that don't. And and people say, well, you do the research, right? I'm like, I'm not going to watch every single Alex Jones claim and then fact check everything. And then people kind of get away with saying these things. But Alex Jones specifically posted a misleading post, which said, and it wasn't even like such a big deal in the context of things. It was just a blatantly misleading claim. So he said Hillary to replace Biden. He didn't say Hillary might replace Biden or insert it as an opinion. He put it as a headline. This is what's happening.
Yeah.
And then he had a video.
Yeah.
And people got mad at me for going after Alex Jones because they're like, what you said, where, oh, he gets most things right. And then how do you know? And why aren't you criticizing the left, where they make their, their headlines and things like that? So I was getting all these kinds of pushbacks that they got to me a bit, like they aggravated me. And that frustrates me when people are not able to at all step away from the conspiracies and they'll say, well, how do you, hey, it's a conspiracy. It hasn't been proven wrong yet.
Yeah.
No,
The
it will
unfalsifiable
never be
stuff.
proven wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
like, keep in mind that, right, you bring up like Alex Jones, right? So you had Joe Rogan say that he feels like he's right about a surprising amount of stuff. I don't remember if it was Jimmy Dore or somebody else on his program that was also agreeing with that. Jimmy Dore, also another of these like centrists who exclusively carries water for the right. And
Oh no, they like to say that Jimmy Dore they're like, oh, you have people on the left who's like, I'm like, Jimmy Dore is not.
Exactly, yeah. JD Vance had a lot of positive things to say about Alex Jones. I think he called him a truth teller. This was a pretty recent speech. You also have people like, like Laura Loomer, who says just the most craziest unhinged shit. I'm pretty sure Donald Trump in his campaign speech, I think it was 2 days ago in a rally speech, praised her and said good things about Laura Loomer, who was telling everybody for a while that Biden was dead. And then you've got people, your centrists like your Brett Weinsteins, who I think Brett was saying that we got baited by the disingenuous Biden campaign to trick us into saying that Biden was dead because he didn't do a public appearance for 3 days, and they fooled us into thinking that he was dead so we would look stupid by saying it. And I'm like,
oh my God,
what are we talking about now? Like, yeah. And then also remember, in true fashion, right? Trump goes before a court and he asks for criminal immunity. We've got Republicans don't impeach him in the Senate. They don't convict because they say, well, he's not president anymore. Giuliani admits to lying about Ruby Freeman in that it was his First Amendment right. Alex Jones, when he went to court to defend his Sandy Hook stuff, said that he was experiencing psychosis, right? Fox News says that they're just an entertainment agency. You can't take them seriously, right? Like, these are the defenses. Like, they're telling you that they're lying. And every single
and I know
forum,
they're lying.
they're
like
saying
a
it.
lot
The
of
conservatives
times,
are saying
like,
it's not the same. The people on the left don't make these claims. It's not the same. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, and I agree. But I do think it's worse because there is a difference between bias, which is happening on the left, versus I do see concentrated lies, right?
Yeah, deliberate.
And that people do carry water for it. And that has been a major source of my frustration. And I don't even know what to do anymore because I did think that through, modeling critical thinking, analyzing things, bringing out facts and logic and addressing specific things, I could sway people. And I do think I had some impact on that, but overall, probably so tiny that I don't know if there's a point. So I'm like, at this point, I'm like, I don't know what to do because I don't want us to continue in this direction because it has gotten so bad. And all these like disinformation merchants who, these citizen journalists and by the way, nothing against real citizen journalism of people on the ground, but this is not it. This is just people who take things from mainstream media and then repackage it as their own or make up stories.
Yeah.
That can't continue, but I don't know what to do about it. I think there is something that we can do maybe in terms of how we deal with the younger generation and what we teach. I think I taught high school for a very short period of time and I taught media literacy and I found that there's such a lack of resources for teachers as teaching aids. But even things like that, like I think that we can make an impact by improving some of the, teaching kids how to deal with social media better, how to identify fake things, how to analyze stories. I do think giving people skills will help, but that's like so far away.
And most people don't even admit we have a problem right now, right? Like you can have a guy saying
like, admitted, they just think it's the left.
Exactly. Yeah. Someone will say people have a huge problem with trusting people without critically fact checking. They're not skeptical enough of their sources, and they don't know how to independently verify their stuff because they don't, read a wide source of different types of media. That's why I listen to Alex Jones and Tim Pool and Joe Rogan and Jimmy Dore, people on the left and right. So and it's like, holy fuck, kill me.
The real honest. They say it's the real honest people. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, when they pick, because there are good. I mean, I think there are some good conservative sources. I think there's some whatever centrist, left leaning. I think there's more independent sort of, but this is also like speaks to this inherent issue with journalism in general. So some of the reasons for the decay aren't even bias, it's financial. So what I saw when I started in journalism, it was more old school. The internet was just kind of popping up, but things were more in print. So you had fact checkers, you had better protocols, you had really good editors who trained you to ask really good questions as you're writing the story. So there was a good format, and also people were buying papers and they were reading the whole thing. Then when the internet started to dominate, well, content became free and it was harder to earn money. And then ultimately what happened was, so it costs very little to produce a crappy piece of writing that's based on maybe copying some other person's piece of writing, and a junior person can do it and it takes them half an hour to write it and you pay them less, versus something that's in depth, takes time, and you're going to assign it to a more senior reporter. And who's going to get more eyeballs? It's actually going to be the crappy clickbaity piece. So that, I think, in general, like ruined journalism. And then on top of it, you have the distrust now of mainstream journalism, but then the incentives for these alternative models are basically the same. Plus, it's more ideological. So I think the mainstream media at least maintains somewhat of a, even if it was like somewhat like ideologically captured in some ways or more biased, it still maintains some facade at the very least of being objective. When you go to these new sources, they completely rely on an audience that agrees with you. So you're going to only publish pieces for that audience.
Yeah.
So there isn't like a real centrist media publication, or if there is, there's very few. And then and everyone who earns money is often like a charlatan. And like I like it when my audience disagrees with me, and I'll have people on the left sometimes disagree with me, people on the right, and sometimes very vehemently. But that's not like, as a financial model, that doesn't work. So if I was relying on that for an income to live off of, it's not what works. And everybody that I've seen who has succeeded in a financial way, it's always been because they started catering to a very specific group of their following or their readership.
Although I would say, I think that this is like a criticism. You ever play an instrument?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, do you mind saying what you played?
Clarinet.
Did you ever play
Yeah, I played the clarinet.
Did you play in college at all, or no?
Write music. No, I was a bad student. I was like, so I played a little bit of piano and I took like some private lessons as an adult, and then I write music. So I'm a little bit like musical, but not terribly good at.
Okay, maybe not. I was gonna make an analogy that like if you go to a master class, okay, and you're watching a grade schooler play an instrument, you're basically going to say the same thing every time, okay? Slow the tempo down, make sure you always practice with metronome, and breath support and proper embouchure. These three comments are going to be to every single like high school or less student, right? And then as they get higher and higher, you've got like more particular criticisms about, intonation, alternate fingering techniques, whatever, right? You might go into like a whole bunch of more complicated things, right? When we talk about like audience capture that a media apparatus might suffer and people are more prone to, delivering opinions people want to hear, these are definitely issues, but right now, at least in conservative media, the problems are far more fundamental than that. I wouldn't mind dealing with a conservative media apparatus that was audience captured. My issue right now is I'm dealing with a media apparatus that, one, call me conspiratorial, and this has been a recent development, so maybe I'll abandon this, but I don't know how many of these motherfuckers are cutting paychecks from, a guy named Dimitri. I don't know how many of these people are getting paid literally by fucking Moscow. Yeah, I don't know right now. I'm actually not sure. It wouldn't
Some of
surprise
them
me.
are.
Yes.
I actually know that for a fact. Yeah.
Okay, that's very interesting. There are things that I can't talk about for documents that I've seen that I don't know how true or not true it is, but it is super mind-fucking me right now. That's one thing. But a second thing is, for a lot of these people, they just lie, okay? That's the issue that I have. It's not that they are presenting things in a biased manner or that they're audience captured. It's that they're comfortable just full out fucking lying. Have you seen I wasn't aware, I didn't watch the footage. Have you seen one of the first big things that Tim Pool did, his documentary or his like video going to Malmo in Sweden?
Was it? Oh, I think I saw a little bit of it, but it was
It's like a
long time
12-minute
ago.
video where he talks about a bunch of people started to put on masks and the cops had to escort them out of a dangerous neighborhood, a shopping plaza, because they were about to get jumped, and it was like this horrible thing. If you watch the whole video, he's fucking lying. It's obvious that he's lying. It's like the most chill. People are
Oh,
just like
really?
walking around. There's like babies and strollers. The part where they go and talk to the cop, they very conveniently cut that whole part, even though they're filming everything else. And the part where they're being escorted out, the police later released a statement. They were just driving out with them. And you can see it too. They just like walk out, they speed up the video footage to kind of talking, and then they walk out. And there was no evidence at any point that anybody was threatening them ever. That was completely fabricated by him. He claimed that there were people putting up masks or whatever. The police said that while they were there watching, apparently they were like pointing the camera at people, and when they were doing that, they like pull their masks up because they didn't want to be on camera. But the evidence of violence and was totally fabricated. As soon as the funniest part of this whole video, after like 10 or 12 minutes, is as soon as they got into the car, when the guy tried to start the car and it didn't start, Tim looks over at the guy and he says, "Did they disable your engine?" Like,
Oh,
this is the level
yeah.
of like
Okay, so
delusional.
this started that long ago.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
I've
So I'm
been
like,
on
the
his
issue,
show.
yeah, it's not bias and it's
Yeah.
not honest capture. It's just outright lies. And I'm like, my God.
I had a debate with him actually, and I think he doesn't like me very much. Also, not just because of the debate, but I think I specifically said that I don't think he's a centrist.
Of
Because I was
course,
like,
yeah.
I'm a centrist, and you're so much more to the right of me. There's no way.
Yeah.
And then he kept arguing it, and then even during the taping, he kept like bringing it up. So it really bothers him for some reason. I'm like, if you are what you are, it's like whatever. But I think maybe it's an important thing for him to believe. I don't know. I think I've just seen a lot of people move. Like maybe he was at some point, but I think the lies, which is a more important part of it, I see that so often everywhere, and I think it's incentivized. It pisses me off about Twitter in particular, where it's financially rewarded. And these people keep lying and lying and lying. And this is, again, it's not, I have no problem. Somebody can have an opinion. I don't care what their opinion is. They can hold whatever opinion they want. I defend their right to have it. I do not defend people's right to lie. And you know that they are lying because they're mislabeling things. They even have, so I know this for a fact, that they have certain group chats and some of the conflicts that are going on around the world where they specifically discuss how to hide the fact that these images, for example, are presented with false context, because people would like reverse search. So they figured out tricks how to avoid being reverse searched. And there's no mechanism by which somebody like that has their voice taken away. And I get in a tricky situation because on the one hand, I'm like, I generally advocate for freedom of speech. And then so people who follow me are like, well, what are you trying to censor? But I'm like, those are people are lying on purpose, and verifiably so. Like, it's not me making a false accusation or suspecting something. It's me being able to prove it. So why should they be allowed to lie? And yes, it's protected speech because lying is protected speech, but that's not on social media or in journalism. That's on, just you don't go to prison for lying, basically,
Yeah.
in most contexts.
I don't think that I don't necessarily advocate for like stronger platform measures against this or legal measures against it. I just wish the culture was a bit different, that it wasn't like able to permeate so easily without any kind of corrective measures. But
it's like, how do you change the culture? Because I thought I could change the culture, or have some impact on it, right?
well, part of it for
well,
me is like being very staunchly oppositional to it rather than being on shows and saying like, yeah, I agree, both sides have problems, because I feel like it lends a lot of credibility or whatever.
But I don't think. So I guess my feeling is that when you're just being as oppositional, or maybe not having these conversations, or maybe you have these conversations and you go full on, like it's not really going to change the people whose mind you need to change or seeking to change. They're going to actually hold on because they feel like they're under attack when this happens. They feel like you're attacking their whole worldview. And I really liked, in my book, I interviewed Daryl Davis, and I've even forgotten this like lesson from him. And I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he's this black man who, yeah. Okay. So, but he said that, when you're dealing with someone who has this worldview, in particular, members of the KKK, you can't really change their worldview, but you can add to it.
Sure.
And then, somehow they can. So I guess like I'm thinking, okay, how can I add to people's worldview? And for example, when I watch a debate, whether okay, so I've already said that I'm mostly pro-Israel.
Hmm.
I say mostly because I certainly think there's criticisms that are valid. And part of why I'll watch someone is because I actually want to see what smart, fact-based criticisms they can throw my way, and can I find a way to dispel them, or do they actually have a point? Like, I actually want to hear that. Um, and so I think there is a lot of people where, even though they might hold viewpoints that are, a lot of times it's just based on such limited information. And is that partially their fault? Sure, especially if they adopt strong positions.
Hmm.
But if they're willing to at least go on a show and be like, okay, Destiny's debating, I don't know, Ben Shapiro, whatever. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go soft. Like, I think it's okay to go hard, but the nature of the discourse, and I think, like, I appreciate seeing when people are honest and have integrity and are also willing to admit when somebody else has a point. Like, one of the problems with debates is that we often do it to win, and then doesn't allow any room for, like, yeah, you know what? Here you have a point, but here's this.
Sure.
And I think that also made it, like, because I think a lot of social media content, video content on YouTube and all that kind of stuff is about, okay, getting the libs or getting the conservatives. And then it doesn't allow that nuance. And people also make really terrible arguments because they'll try to get the stupidest person to
Yeah.
represent the position,
Yeah,
not
but
the
then
really good one.
this speaks to my issue now, though, too, is that, like, I'm a little bit ashamed and embarrassed that, like, Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens can all say, oh, well, I debated Destiny. Because, like, no, you didn't. I was like, I had to hold my tongue the whole fucking time, and now I feel like I've played part of this stupid game, yeah. But
I think you were very polite. I do.
yeah, but if I was
but I think there's a difference.
I could have. There were so many things that I should have went way harder on all three of those conversations that I didn't. But
Well, on facts, I think you should. I think in conduct, I don't think. I think it's still think it's important to maintain like a fairness.
Sure.
But in terms of going hard on, like, hey, you don't know this, or what about this, or I think the strongest, when I was listening to you go really hardcore on those conservatives in that space that you did, or even the two spaces, is what really stood out to me and made me think about them was that they were so ignorant of the facts.
Sure. Yeah.
I don't think you have to scream at them to achieve that, but when you ask a specific question, and don't let them get away with it. Like, I do think it's important to not let people to just change the
topic. Yeah.
subject, which I think you're good at. I'm not that great at that myself, but I think that seeing that and seeing how much they are trying to slip away from something or change the subject or what about, but also just not knowing the facts, me realizing how little they know of the facts actually had a big impact on my thinking about them.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
If you want, we can always chat again in the future. You can email for anything else. I've got another debate I'm supposed to do with this Project Veritas guy on the January 6th elector stuff. Oh boy.
Oh
So,
my God.
yeah.
Oh, Project Veritas. Yeah.
Do you want to shout yourself out or anything that you want people to know, or where they can find you, or?
Sure. Appreciate that. I appreciate the conversation. Wasn't sure exactly how it'd go.
Yeah.
But yeah, people can find me. So my name is Catherine Brodsky, and you can find me on Twitter if you guys are still on there, or X. Mysterious Cat is my username, K-A-T, Mysterious K-A-T. And then I also have a Substack where I write like different essays. You can find it, Catherine Writes, like W-R-I-T-E-S. And you can also find out a little bit more about my book, No Apologies, which I try to be, nuanced about all sorts of topics, which maybe makes me an evil centrist, but hopefully not. So
Okay. Well,
thank you so much for the conversation.
yeah, thanks for the chat. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'll see you later. Bye.
See you later. Bye.